For 15 years, he never hesitated, never questioned, never failed. But when Marcus Chen opened the encrypted file for his 89th assignment, the photograph staring back at him shattered everything he thought he knew about loyalty. What he did next would cost him everything, but saving her life meant destroying his own. This isn't a story about a killer who found redemption. It's about a man who discovered that some missions don't end when you pull the trigger. Marcus Chen was 19 when the agency found him. An orphan with no family, no records, no one who would miss him. He was perfect. They trained him for 3 years in a facility that didn't exist on any map. They taught him 17 ways to kill without leaving evidence. They showed him how to disappear in crowded cities and how to become invisible in plain sight. Most importantly, they taught him to sever the connection between action and emotion. His first target was a corrupt banker in Singapore. Marcus tracked him for 2 weeks, learned his routines, studied his security. On a Tuesday evening, he approached the man in an underground parking garage. It took 8 seconds. The banker never saw his face. Marcus walked away and never thought about him again. That was the pattern for the next 15 years. Receive the encrypted file. Study the target. Execute the mission. Forget. No names. No faces after the job. No second thoughts. Within the agency, they called him the Ghost of Beijing. 88 missions, 88 successes, 0 complications. Marcus had become exactly what they designed him to be, a perfect weapon with no conscience to dull its edge. But even ghosts have pasts they can't erase, and Marcus's was about to find him. The night he received Mission 89 started like any other. The encrypted file arrived at exactly midnight through the usual channels. Marcus downloaded it to his secure device, poured himself a glass of water, and sat at his desk in the minimalist apartment that served as his temporary base. High priority target, the file header read. Immediate execution required. Timeline: 48 hours. He opened the dossier and began his standard protocol. Target designation, location, known associates, daily routines. Everything was routine until he scrolled to the photograph. The file was thicker than usual. High priority target. Immediate execution required. But it was the photograph that made his hands freeze. Dr. Sarah Lin, age 34. Humanitarian physician working with refugee populations in Southeast Asia. Current location: medical clinic in rural Thailand. The woman in the photo had kind eyes and wore her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She was smiling slightly, as if someone had just told her something amusing. Marcus stared at that face for a full minute without moving. He knew her, not from a previous mission, not from surveillance or intelligence briefings. He knew her from before, from the orphanage. From the time when he still had a name that wasn't an alias and a life that wasn't built on lies. Sarah Lin had been 12 when they met. Marcus was 9. The orphanage in rural China was overcrowded and underfunded, a place where children learned quickly that kindness was a luxury. But Sarah had been different. When the older boys stole Marcus's food, she shared hers. When they beat him for being small and quiet, she stood between them with a fury that surprised everyone. She was the only person in that place who treated him like he mattered. They were friends for 3 years. Then came the selection day. Men in suits arrived at the orphanage, walking through the rooms with clipboards, studying the children with clinical detachment. They chose 6 kids that day. Marcus was one of them. Sarah cried when they took him away. He never saw her again. The agency told him years later that his death had been faked. A training accident, they said. It was cleaner that way. No loose ends. No one looking for ghosts. Sarah thought he died when he was 12 years old. She had no idea that the boy she once protected had become the kind of man who killed for a living. He had 48 hours to complete the mission. The agency's reasoning was classified. But Marcus knew one truth. They never gave targets without cause. So what had Sarah done? For the first time in 15 years, Marcus broke protocol. He accessed databases he wasn't authorized to enter. He traced Sarah's movements over the past 6 months. He found medical records, travel logs, patient files. It took him 4 hours to piece together the truth. 2 months ago, Sarah's clinic had treated a man with a gunshot wound. She didn't ask questions. She just stabilized him and saved his life. That man turned out to be a high-level defector carrying state secrets. During his recovery, he talked. He revealed information about government operations, black site locations, names of operatives. Sarah had been in the room for some of those conversations. She'd heard things she shouldn't have heard. The problem was, Sarah didn't know what she'd heard. She had no idea the patient was anyone important. She didn't understand the significance of his ramblings. She was just a doctor who treated everyone who came through her door, no matter who they were. But the agency didn't care about her intentions. They cared about security. Sarah Lin had become a liability. The solution was simple and permanent. Eliminate the witness. Marcus stared at the mission file until his vision blurred. He thought about the rules that had governed his life for 15 years. Complete every mission. Trust the agency's judgment. Never question the targets. These rules had kept him alive. They had given him purpose when he had nothing else. But now those same rules were asking him to put a bullet in the head of the only person who had ever shown him kindness. Marcus faced an impossible choice. Complete the mission and remain the perfect operative, or refuse and become the hunted. He closed his eyes and remembered something Sarah had said to him 22 years ago. They were sitting on the steps outside the orphanage, on a rare, quiet evening. Marcus had asked her why she always helped him when it just made the bullies target her too. She looked at him with those same kind eyes from the photograph and said, "Everyone deserves a chance to choose who they become. Don't let this place decide for you." Those words had stayed with him through everything, buried deep under layers of training and conditioning. But they were still there, and now they were screaming. Marcus realized something that night that should have been obvious all along. He never chose this life. The agency chose him. They found a broken child and molded him into a weapon. Every mission, every kill, every emotionless execution had been programmed into him. But Sarah's words offered a different truth. Even now, even after everything, he still had a choice. He could choose who he became. Even if it was only this once. He opened his secure phone and typed 4 words into the mission status field. Mission declined. Target protected. Not her. Never her. But refusing wasn't an option the agency planned for. Within hours, his own handler activated Protocol Black, the termination order that turns the hunter into the hunted. Marcus had worked with the agency long enough to know their contingency plans. The moment he declined the mission, automated systems would alert his handler. His handler would escalate to command. Command would authorize Protocol Black within 30 minutes. Once activated, Protocol Black was irreversible. His credentials would be revoked. His safe houses would be compromised. His accounts would be frozen. And a backup team would be dispatched to complete 2 objectives. Eliminate the original target. Eliminate the failed operative. Marcus had been on backup teams before. He knew how efficient they were. He had 24 hours at most before they arrived in Thailand. It wasn't enough time to run, but it might be enough time to save her. Marcus packed a single bag with emergency supplies, weapons, and forged documents. He destroyed his secure devices and burned the mission file. Then he did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He booked a commercial flight under a false identity and flew to Thailand like a normal person. During the flight, he planned his approach. Sarah didn't know he was alive. Showing up after 22 years would be a shock. He needed to make her understand the danger quickly without causing panic. More importantly, he needed to convince her to disappear. The clinic was in a rural area 3 hours north of Bangkok. Marcus arrived just after dawn. The building was small and weather-worn, surrounded by dense jungle. Patients lined up outside, families with sick children, elderly people with chronic conditions, refugees with nowhere else to go. Marcus watched from a distance and saw Sarah emerge from the clinic entrance. She looked older than her photograph, tired but still carrying herself with that same quiet determination he remembered. She moved from patient to patient, speaking in multiple languages, offering reassurance. She was everything the agency feared, a witness, and she was everything Marcus remembered. A good person in a world that didn't deserve her. He waited until she took a break, then approached carefully. Sarah was reviewing medical charts in a small office when Marcus knocked on the open door. She looked up with a polite smile that froze when she saw his face. The charts fell from her hands. Her eyes went wide with recognition and disbelief. "Marcus," she whispered. "But you're dead. You died. They told me you died." Marcus stepped inside and closed the door. "I know what they told you," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Sarah, for everything. But right now, you need to listen very carefully. Your life is in danger, and we don't have much time." Sarah stared at him like he was a hallucination. She touched his arm tentatively, as if checking whether he was real. "When did you? How are you? What happened to you?" Marcus gave her the abbreviated version. The agency, the training, the 15 years. He left out the details of what he'd actually done, but Sarah was smart. She understood what his silence meant. Her expression shifted from shock to something like grief. "Oh, Marcus," she said softly. "What did they do to you?" He ignored the question because there wasn't time for it. The important part came next. 2 months ago, you treated a patient with a gunshot wound. He told you things. You didn't realize it at the time, but he was a defector. The information he shared made you a security risk. Sarah's face paled as she made the connection. "They sent you to kill me?" Marcus nodded. "I refused, which means they're sending someone else. You have maybe 12 hours before they get here. We need to leave now." But Sarah didn't move toward the door. Instead, she looked out the window at the patients waiting outside. "I can't," she said. "These people have nowhere else to go. If I leave, who takes care of them?" Marcus felt a flash of frustration. "If you stay, you die. If you die, you can't help anyone." Sarah met his eyes with that same stubborn determination he remembered from childhood. "Then we figure out another way. I won't abandon my patients." This was the difference between them. He'd spent 15 years taking lives. She'd spent hers saving them. And that conviction would nearly kill them both. Marcus tried reasoning with her. He explained Protocol Black. He described what the backup team would do. He told her that noble intentions didn't stop bullets. Sarah listened patiently, then shook her head. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, Marcus. I really do. But I became a doctor because I couldn't stand watching people suffer when I could help. If I run now, I'm saying my life matters more than theirs. I won't do that." Marcus wanted to argue, but he recognized the futility. Sarah had always been like this. Once she made a decision based on principle, nothing could move her. "Fine," he said finally. "Then I stay too. If they're coming for you, they'll have to go through me first." Sarah started to protest, but Marcus cut her off. "You don't get to sacrifice yourself alone. You taught me that everyone deserves a choice. This is mine." They spent the next few hours preparing. Marcus secured the clinic perimeter, identified potential entry points, set up basic defensive measures with what limited resources they had. It wasn't much, but it might buy them time. Sarah continued treating patients, refusing to change her routine. Marcus watched her work and felt something he hadn't experienced in 15 years, purpose beyond the mission. He wasn't protecting an objective. He was protecting a person who mattered. The backup team arrived earlier than Marcus expected. They were good. He spotted them an hour before sunset. 3 operatives, all veterans, moving through the jungle with practiced efficiency. Marcus recognized one of them from previous operations. They weren't coming for a conversation. He woke Sarah from a brief rest and told her it was time. She nodded calmly, far calmer than anyone should be facing their own execution. Marcus positioned her in the clinic's interior room with instructions to stay low. Then he moved to the entrance and waited. The team leader approached first. Marcus recognized him immediately. Chen, his former handler, called out, "We know you're in there. This doesn't have to be difficult. Send out the doctor, and we'll make this quick." Marcus stepped into the doorway where they could see him. "You taught me something, Wei. You said a good operative knows when a mission is compromised and adapts accordingly." This mission is compromised. Sarah Lin knows nothing useful. Killing her accomplishes nothing except proving the agency operates on fear instead of intelligence. Wei sighed like a disappointed teacher. I also taught you that sentiment is weakness. You've become weak, Chen. Step aside or we complete both objectives. Marcus didn't move. Then you taught me too well, because I'm not the one who's trapped here with you. You're trapped here with me. What happened next was brutal and efficient. Marcus had trained with these men. He knew their tactics, their patterns, their weaknesses. But they knew his too. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes. Marcus eliminated the first operative quickly, used the second as cover, and forced Wei into a tactical mistake, but Wei got off a shot that caught Marcus in the side. Marcus felt the impact like a hammer blow. He dropped to one knee, raised his weapon, and fired twice. Wei fell. The silence afterward was deafening. Marcus collapsed against the doorframe, blood spreading across his shirt. Sarah rushed out despite his earlier instructions. She saw the wound and immediately shifted into doctor mode. Inside. Now, she ordered, pulling him toward the medical supplies. Marcus tried to tell her to run, that more teams would come, that this was only the beginning. But his vision was blurring and his words came out slurred. Sarah worked with focused intensity. She cut away his shirt, assessed the damage, began the emergency procedure to stop the bleeding. You're not dying on me, she said firmly. Not after 22 years. Not after coming back. You don't get to play hero and then quit. Marcus felt himself fading. He wanted to tell her that he wasn't a hero, that heroes didn't have 88 bodies in their past, that he was just a broken weapon that finally chose to break differently, but darkness was pulling him down. His final conscious thought was Sarah's voice saying, "Stay with me, Marcus. You chose to save me. Now let me save you." But survival was only the beginning of their sentence. Marcus woke up 3 days later in a different location. Sarah had moved them after stabilizing him, using contacts from her refugee network to find a safe house. The wound was serious but not fatal. Sarah's skill had kept him alive. When he was strong enough to talk, she explained what happened after he lost consciousness. She'd called in favors, transported him secretly, and created a cover story for the clinic. As far as anyone knew, both Dr. Sarah Lin and her security guard had died in a tragic fire. Their bodies were never recovered. 6 months passed. Marcus and Sarah lived under assumed identities in a small village near the Cambodian border. Sarah opened a modest clinic under a false name, serving local communities who didn't ask questions. Marcus worked as her security guard, a role that wasn't entirely false. They maintained minimal digital footprint and moved carefully. The agency had declared them both dead, but Marcus knew better than to assume they'd stopped looking. He spent his days protecting the clinic and his nights watching the perimeter. It was a different kind of mission now. No objectives, no handler, no endpoint. Just the continuous choice to keep Sarah safe. The cost was high. Marcus could never return to his old life, not that there was much to return to. He lived in constant vigilance, always watching for threats, never fully at ease. Every stranger was a potential operative. Every unusual pattern was a possible surveillance. It was exhausting, but something had changed. Marcus slept through the night for the first time in 15 years. No nightmares about targets, no dreams of empty parking garages and 8-second encounters. He'd traded one kind of sleeplessness for another, and somehow, it felt like a fair exchange. Sarah adapted differently. She grieved the clinic she'd built and the patients she'd left behind. But she rebuilt. Every person she treated in the new clinic was a small act of defiance against the system that tried to silence her. She never asked Marcus about his past missions. He never told her. Some truths were too heavy to share. But she knew what he'd been, and she chose to see who he was trying to become. That forgiveness was worth more than any mission success. One evening, Marcus found Sarah sitting outside the clinic watching the sunset. She looked pensive. "Do you regret it?" she asked without preamble. "Refusing the mission? Losing everything?" Marcus considered the question carefully. He thought about his apartment that no longer existed, his reputation that was now a death certificate. The 15 years of purpose that had evaporated in a single choice. I regret what I was, he said finally. I don't regret what I chose. Sarah nodded slowly. That boy I knew at the orphanage, she said. The quiet one who never fought back. I always wondered what happened to him. Marcus looked at her. He died, Marcus said. The agency killed him when I was 12. But maybe some part of him survived long enough to make one choice that mattered. Sarah smiled sadly. Everyone deserves a chance to choose who they become. I'm glad you finally took yours. Marcus never got his old life back. The agency declared him dead, and in many ways, he was. The man who never questioned, who never hesitated, that person died the moment he chose love over duty. The man who remained was different, uncertain, fallible, haunted by 88 ghosts that would never leave him. But he was also free in a way he'd never experienced. Free to choose each day whether to be the weapon they made him or the person Sarah believed he could be. But here's what haunts him. The agency still operates. New recruits are being molded into weapons just like he was. Somewhere right now, there's a 19-year-old orphan learning to sever emotion from action. There's a handler teaching them that sentiment is weakness. There's a first target waiting in an underground parking garage. And that cycle continues, producing more ghosts who will one day face their own 89th mission. Marcus thinks about this often. He wonders how many other operatives carry a photograph in their encrypted files that will make them hesitate. He wonders how many will make the choice he made, and how many will complete the mission because it's easier than breaking. The question isn't whether more operatives will break like he did. It's whether they'll have someone worth breaking for. Marcus had Sarah. He had a memory of kindness from childhood, and a woman who refused to let him forget his humanity. Most operatives don't have that. They have nothing but the mission, and that makes them far more dangerous than Marcus ever was. Because the most dangerous weapon isn't the one that chooses to break, it's the one that never realizes it has a choice at all. Marcus knows he can't save them. He can barely save himself, but every day he wakes up in that village, sees Sarah treating patients who can't pay, and stands guard over people who deserve protection, he's proving something important, that even a perfect weapon can malfunction in the right way. That 15 years of conditioning can be overwritten by 3 years of childhood kindness. That some missions don't end when you pull the trigger, they end when you finally refuse to fire. Sometimes the most dangerous mission isn't the one you complete, it's the one you refuse.